Welcome to Nice Ashes. I'm Nate.
And I'm Mike.
And I'm Simcha. So what are we smoking tonight?
We are smoking a Rocky Patel Vintage 1990. We have smoked one of these before, first season, but this is a different size. This is a little bit smaller than the original one that we smoked.
And a little bit smaller, that's a cigar aficionado term, right?
Yes, it is. This is what looks to be like a 6-inch by 50 gauge, I'm going to guess. And the one we had before was a little bigger and a little longer.
You can say girthier. You're not going to...
Girthier. Yep. So we're testing whether the size difference changes our perception of how good the cigar is.
Yeah, I wet the cap and I certainly gagged less with this smaller diameter, so that's a plus.
Easier on your pride.
Yeah. I don't have to open my jaw, like unlock my jaw as much. Are you doing just one V-cut, Mike, or are you doing multiple?
I'm doing the double.
All right, I think I'll go with the one. I think it's just a little narrow, but...
It is small enough. I considered it.
All right, is everybody ready to light on up?
Yes, sir.
All right, let's do it.
Wow.
So first thoughts on this one, anyone?
This was everything I was imagining it would be. I'm not an aficionado. I mean, I enjoy cigars, and I got plenty of friends that smoke them. So, but this was everything I was hoping it would be.
Nice.
Like with the flavors, like I've tried different, I've tried different ones, and just with the, I don't know how to describe it.
It's all good. Hopefully we're a podcast for entry level or people that want to get into the cigar thing. We try not to keep things
too complicated.
Yeah, we try not to get too complicated with everything.
It's like a dark taste. That's the best way I can describe it. Earthy, maybe not.
So
earthy.
I'm getting a lot of wood and a lot of leather.
There you go.
Yep.
I mean, I've tried really leathery ones, so that's why I didn't want to say leather. But
it's not a bad leather taste by any means, but it's kind of got that roundness to it. It's a good cigar.
Yeah, it's. I think it starts out good on my end too.
What is everybody pairing their cigars with?
Oh, yes. I'm doing the Hop Valley Stash Bandicoot Hazy Imperial IPA because I figure if I'm tired after the weekend, I might as well get a little extra tired with some high-octane brew.
Nice. And you, Simon?
Unfortunately, nothing at the moment. I didn't we just finished like a crazy month, and like I lost my lighter. I've been scrambling to look for it. I mean, until we lit up. I mean, that's been a little crazy, but just the cigar.
Nice.
I didn't go out today, other than work a little bit.
Sure. I have a Castle Danger Scotch Ale that I picked up directly from the manufacturer today, and then I have some whiskey from the distillery in Duluth.
Hey, there you go.
I just spent a month drinking whiskey.
Nice.
I'm giving myself a break.
Perfect. Yeah, because you just and we've been talking. Well, Simcha and I have, and Mike and I talk. The three of us don't talk frequently all together. What we do, we record it, I guess. But you just wrapped up. You read through the entire Torah, right, each year.
Yeah.
And so you just now restarted at Genesis 1:1, right?
Yeah, and it's a whole month-long celebration, 3 holidays. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot is what they're called. But you only see 2 of them on a regular calendar. But it's like this, it's crazy. It's the craziest. It's always amazing, but it's always like really hectic and it's really crazy. And well, Nate got to hear a lot about it.
Yes.
Sounds like being Jewish in Chicago is a lot of fun.
Yeah. I was pouring shots of whiskey and giving blessings to my ex-wife. She was there and we're like giving each other blessings and taking these shots. Everyone's dancing. It's loud. It's like an atmosphere. And we don't have our phones 4 of those days. So like, we're not aware of the outside world.
Sure.
So it's a real amazing experience. But my tolerance went through the roof and I got really full of whiskey.
Yes. I feel like we all should have maybe gotten full of whiskey before talking about what we're going to talk about this episode. We are doing the long-awaited recap, I guess you would say, recap or review of the Ahsoka miniseries.
Now, off the bat, I heard a rumor somehow that you liked this show.
You know what? I've matured as a human being. The Ahsoka show helped me mature as a human being. It was a real journey.
You killed Mike.
It was a real journey. Okay.
So Nate got to be a part of that journey because the first 2 episodes I saw, I thought it was really freaking awesome. Because, they built up hype for it. Like, I heard about it when The Mandalorian Season 1 came out. One of my kids said it. I don't know where they got that info, but apparently it's been anticipated for quite a while. And because it's like, basically, we're gonna see the characters from Rebels. And I watched the heck out of Rebels. It was a slow start, but, once I got into it, I binge watched it. So I realized quickly, very quickly, that I was blinded by love.
I'm so happy that you've come to the dark side.
Use your hate.
Use your hate.
Should we do a quick just recap of the Ahsoka series before we kind of get into it, you think? I know it's one thing Dave Filoni did not do for anybody who hadn't seen Rebels. He just launched into what he thought people wanted to see, I guess. I don't know. I'll take a stab at it, and then either of you two can correct me if I'm wrong. We've got 3 episodes. The first 3 episodes, Ahsoka is kind of there mostly, and she's looking for this magic ball map thing. And this magic ball
she's looking for the
thing,
MacGuffin. Yes.
The magic ball map thing somehow knows not only where Grand Admiral Thrawn is, because he left at the end of Rebels, and so did Ezra, but also knows where Ezra is. And this magical ball thing knows exactly where these 2 people are in all of everything. And so they spend 3 episodes, Ahsoka trying to get that. She gets it, but then she can't spin it to align the symbols to open it up, so she has to call in her artist friend, who is Sabine Wren. And Sabine Wren looks at it for a little bit and opens it up, but doesn't record anything, and then it gets stolen. But there's these bad people, but they're not really Sith, but they go and call themselves Jedi, but they're not also really Jedi. And then they spend a lot more episodes basically fucking around. I feel like Dave Filoni built that set with like the Sith Stonehenge on that rocky cliff with the red trees in the background. And he's like, look, I blew my entire wad of cash on this thing. We're going to shoot every fucking episode here. And then they finally end up hitching a ride with these space whales and go to this planet to find Ezra, and Thrawn is there. And Thrawn's like, I don't really care if we find Ezra or if the Jedi, Ahsoka finds the people or not. And then 5 minutes later, he's like, we have to at least send out a couple people after them, but not too many because we're still loading stuff onto our ship. And they also have another Sith Stonehenge there, which I felt was kind of the same set, but they just changed the backdrop. I don't know. Saving money, I guess. And then Thrawn is like, here, Sabine, why don't you just fucking take a wolf thing and go find Ezra? And so she does, and he's living among the hermit crabs. And so that was cool, I guess, if you like hermit crabs. And then Ahsoka gets there on a space whale hitchhike ride, and goes there. And then they're like, they've got all these stormtroopers because Thrawn was back on he was like bipolar. Like one minute he wanted to leave them alone and just load up their stuff and get out of there because he's been stranded there for 10 years. Because this takes place after Rebels and after Return of the Jedi.
Now, hold on, Nate. Are we clear that it is actually 10 years, or is it some
he's been
time
there
later?
10 years. I don't know.
Yes.
Does it matter?
When we start to make complaints, I'm going to complain about the very first and the very second scenes of the very first show.
Yes. Judging by the size of the shells the hermit crabs were in, it was at least 8 years, but potentially up to 12 years because hermit crabs will change shells every, I think, 8 to 12 years. I have no idea.
They were cute.
And then so anyway, they find everybody, and then everybody reunites, and it's supposed to be some happy moment, but there's all these like stormtroopers coming, and so Sabine is like, here, take your lightsaber back, Ezra, and Ezra's like, I don't need that, I have the Force, and she's like, well, take a blaster. He goes, I have the Force. So then there's a whole like 10-minute montage of Ezra Force pushing people in kind of like a really lame way. And then they go to raid Admiral Thrawn's shit because he decided not to leave, I guess, or not to move the loading slightly higher than a Jedi could jump or something. And then, of course, he has to go build a new lightsaber with David Tennant robot. And I feel like there was kind of a nice moment where he was like, the only other person who used this part was Kanan, which was his teacher. But you'd only know that if you had watched Rebels. And then at the end of it, Ezra gets on board with some mumbo jumbo hocus pocus stuff with Thrawn and goes back and meets up with Hera. And then Ahsoka and Sabine, the two non-Sith, inquisitors, are also on the planet somewhere in Rivendell or something. And then Thrawn is back in the main galaxy. And Ahsoka's like, well, okay, everything's cool. And then it ends, and you don't know anything about anything. I don't know. Maybe that's a bad summary because I'm kind of colored with my.
That was perfect.
That was perfect, and it was. It could have been 3 episodes. The 8 episodes could have been cut down to 3 episodes easily.
Well, I feel like this is what they should have done. Instead of doing 3 episodes chasing the magic ball, maybe don't have a magic ball. I don't know. Or if you have it, like, spend so little time on it, give everybody like a half-hour recap of what happened in Rebels, because everybody who's a fan who had already seen Rebels would lose their shit seeing everyone, I'm talking everyone, Kanan and everyone, live action, even if it's for one scene or two. And then like, I don't like how Ahsoka got there by having Mr. Bad Back defeat her in battle. And I understand the actor was sick, and it's not supposed to be a slight on him, and he's dead now. And so it's not supposed to be a slight on him. But like Balin, Mr. Badback, Sith Lord or something, defeats Ahsoka Tano. But I liked that episode with her and Hayden Christensen going through like the Clone Wars.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I feel like that was good for like soul searching for her, because then her character, that was like the 5th episode or something out of an 8-episode series. And she didn't really feel like Ahsoka until after that episode.
Yeah, it was goofy.
Wow. But can I ask, I got a question. When I saw the episode, and I was kind of thinking, oh boy, like we're going to find what's really special about Ahsoka. Like that's what I was thinking that it was going to be about, like her being somehow the extension of Anakin. I don't know. I was thinking deeply about it. Like, what are we going to learn about this? And it was cool because we got to see the Clone Wars. But when I'm analyzing it in the psycho-spiritual way, or the philosophical way, whatever you want to call it, I'm like, wait, what was that all about? Was that just to show us the Clone Wars and how cool that is and have Hayden Christensen? Or was there something?
I think partly, but I think the bigger subtext of that episode was Ahsoka was distraught because her master, who's supposed to teach her the Jedi way, was really teaching her to be a weapon of war. And that was the whole dichotomy.
Right. That is something that I got out of that, yeah.
Yeah, I think, well, what I got out of it was that, and the whole Clone Wars series was about how the Jedi had stopped being the Jedi and started just being warlords, basically.
Yes.
Because who the hell sends out like 10-year-olds with lightsabers to go and kill people in battles?
Well, and if you notice, like in the Clone Wars, even in the prequel trilogy, any Jedi is automatically given the rank of general.
Right.
But they're not.
Yeah, a Jedi is a general and a Padawan is a commander. Right.
So you're telling me like anything that Anakin said some vague things to Ahsoka? Don't remember right off the bat that made me think like her inner person or whatever, like in that way. Other than what we get from what you just mentioned in regards to Ahsoka, was there a message, or was it just about the fact that they were used as weapons of war? Does that make sense?
It does make sense, and I don't know if I got a deeper message.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I feel like it was kind of Ahsoka's inner turmoil. Yeah, I mean, and if you had seen Clone Wars, you would know all about her betrayal and how Anakin was the only one who stood up for her, and she left the Jedi Order of her own choosing, even though they tried to kick her, or they kicked her out, and then they wanted her back, and she's like, absolutely not. So I don't know if she was actually interacting with Anakin's Force Ghost, or if she was just having like a internal crisis of conscience, and remembering Anakin in those situations. So I guess that part's kind of open to interpretation.
After that episode where we got to see her experience in the Clone Wars, I was like, no wonder these people get disillusioned with the Jedi Order and then they go to the other side. like Count Dooku, for example.
Yeah.
And
well, and I think that's here's my thoughts, and I want to put this up out front. Is for a long time I was rah Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau, right up through because they were the ones that did Clone Wars and Rebels, and they did Mandalorian, and I was not thrilled with Book of Boba Fett, which they also did. I was not thrilled with season 3 of Mandalorian. But they were always in the past, they were operating in this gray space. So they were almost operating as Ahsoka Tano. She's not a Sith, she's not a Jedi. But they're operating in this gray space, and I feel like Kathleen Kennedy is like the great eye of Sauron. Didn't notice them because they were kind of operating in this gray space, but then they started getting more popular than all of the stuff that she was like had her fingerprints all over. You know, they were more popular than the sequel trilogy. And so finally, Dave Filoni's like, well, I'm doing my Ahsoka thing. Finally, and that's great. And Kathleen Kennedy swooped down and put a whole bunch of stipulations on him. I don't know for sure, but this feels like this is a Kathleen Kennedy like bullshit thing to me.
Do you feel like, I mean, the people, I don't know. She's not a Star Wars fan.
It depends on who you ask. The Force is female, Simcha. I don't know if you knew that. She was.
Wasn't that the whole thing about her, though? She wasn't like.
She was like George Lucas's. Was she like his secretary or like production assistant? Mike, do you remember?
Yes, yeah. She was involved with both George Lucas and Steven Spielberg and their
you'll see her name on like the latest Indiana Jones film. She was one of the producers on that. So she's like.
She was given the nod by George Lucas when he handed the company over to Disney.
Yeah.
So she was heavily involved with the creative process of like the real Indiana Jones and the real Star Wars and
so she's
all
got
of this. Yeah, oh yeah, she's got legitimate credentials. She was.
That's how uneducated I am about her because the only person like Star Wars Theory who I listen to, he has what to say about her. So I was under some false impressions as to who she was.
Well, I feel like she's able to hate Star Wars from the inside. You know what I mean? Like,
right. People like to poop on her because
these decisions.
Yeah, she's led the company down in a downward trajectory, but realistically, she was a great choice. She's got a lot of experience, especially with the original productions. So she was highly qualified. Her politics seem to get in the way of getting good stories, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So some of the things. I mean, there's quite a few things that bother me about it was boring, right? Can we all say that?
Yeah,
it was boring.
Yeah.
It was slow and boring.
So the one scene when they landed, I don't remember where, but they landed somewhere because it doesn't matter. Who cares? They landed somewhere. And then David Tennant droid was like, I got to go fix like some panels outside. And then all these like, were they robots or stormtroopers or something? And then Sabine and Ahsoka went out with lightsabers blasting. And that was like a great scene. And I was like, holy shit, like I want more of this. And then David Tennant's like, well, don't split up. And then they split up, of course, because they have to. But I liked the Anakin episode. And so it was kind of like, but that was like the 5th episode. I'm like, man, they only have 3 left. And by the time we got down to the 7th episode, and knowing that it was a mini series and there's only going to be 8 episodes, I'm like, nothing's going to be wrapped up. They just don't have time unless it's like a 3-hour finale. You can't wrap everything up. Like it's just going to be. So I don't understand. Like everybody who worked on the show understood it was an 8-episode thing. So it's mind-boggling you would waste 3 episodes on a magic map ball and 1 whole episode of Sabine in the hospital.
Which she should have been fucking dead. You get stabbed in the guts with a lightsaber by somebody who is supposed to be a force powerful person. And you, like Sabine, is not force capable. She is just a Mandalorian.
Now, Mike. She is now at the end.
It's ridiculous.
But I don't know why but I'm glad they finally did the same thing that they do to these male characters from these legacy or these canon movies. And they just hamstring Sabine, right? Like Sabine's supposed to be a weapons expert. She doesn't miss shots. She's a Mandalorian, and she's back there plinking away in the back of Ahsoka's ship and can't hit jack shit.
It bothered me.
It's like she can't do anything with any of her stuff. She has to try and use the Force now. Like she should be a badass bitch regardless of Force sensitivity or not.
Well, I mean, she's a Mandalorian who's a commander in the rebel military because she spent her entire life up to that point fighting the Empire. And she can't shoot some fucking TIE fighters down in a ship that she fought in for 10 years? How is that even possible? You know what I mean? That doesn't make any sense. And then Ahsoka has to go out and lightsaber a TIE. I mean, come on. Lightsaber a TIE fighter down? That's stupid.
Yeah.
I don't know what I watched. I told Nate this after I finished the last episode. I was like, what the heck's going on? I don't know what's going on. I can tell you I watched the Ahsoka show, but I can't tell you, like, you know, the lore of it. What's going on? There's so many things that were like, I felt were unanswered for whatever reason, and they wasted a lot of time. And I saw this. I wasn't reading reviews. I don't have that much attention. I just see some headlines and was like, oh, they got critics already? Come on, they need to give it a chance. But every time I was like, Nate was like, they're wasting time. And I was like, they are.
They're wasting time, and then they were not specific on purpose. So the first scene of the first episode, they said Ahsoka Tano was a former Jedi Knight, which is a lie. She was not a Jedi Knight. And I knew the tone was going to be wrong because they've already said something that is clearly not canonically accurate, right? And
yeah, I kind of chalked that one up to like people weren't sure anymore because it's been a while since there's been Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
But when she didn't correct them, because in all the other series, she would correct everybody the instant that slipped out of their mouth. Like, oh, you're a Jedi. She'd be like, I am not a Jedi.
Right.
So like, that's when I knew the tone was off, when she didn't correct anybody. Because everybody in the past series had made that mistake of calling her a Jedi, and she's always quick to point out that she was not a Jedi. And I think didn't she point out she wasn't a Jedi in Mandalorian?
Yes, she did.
So why the change now? This takes place at the same time as Mandalorian, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yes. From what I understand, basically. Post victory for the Rebels. After Ahsoka, by the way, just fought a war for 20 years as an agent of the Rebel forces, right?
Fulcrum.
Yeah, she's Fulcrum. How, you know? I thought that the Ahsoka show was going to be about her adventures as Fulcrum.
Well, even if it's to find Thrawn and Ezra, that's fine. But my God, you wasted 3 episodes on a map ball. You know, you have 8 episodes. You wasted 3 of them on the map ball. You made maybe like 2 decent episodes, 1 good episode, and then you introduced hermit crabs, which are fucking stupider than the Ewoks. Like, just put Ewoks back in there then, goddammit. Give me the Gungans. I don't need fucking hermit crabs.
They need cute stuff for kids to buy toys of.
I guess, but like the whole reason Ezra wasn't around was because he was going to go learn more Force shit from the fucking space whales. And so,
right.
Like when we see Ezra, he's supposed to be as badass as Luke is in Return of the Jedi. Like, he's supposed to be that fucking badass. He's supposed to be as badass as Luke in the season 2 finale of Mandalorian, where he force crushes robots and he just goes in and kills everybody and does everything badass with the Force. And then we get Ezra and he's like, I'm going to Force push people. I don't need a lightsaber. You're supposed to, you should have been studying for the 10 fucking years, not dicking around with the hermit crabs.
It's goofy. It's goofy.
You know about the Ahsoka Jedi thing? Like, my love was so blind when I first heard that. I was trying to rationalize it lore-wise. I was like, well, you know what? They could have just been, she probably didn't want to get technical and say, well, you know, I'm not really a Jedi. Like, maybe that's why. Like, I was trying, but it bothered me, but I was just like trying to rationalize it. And my buddy's like, it makes sense, you know, maybe it was just the lingo. But dude, it's bad writing. Like, you
got
can't.
Stockholm Syndrome, bro. Kathleen Kennedy's got you.
And I was like, oh, that's so true. But, you know, Ahsoka, she's still the love of our lives. The real Ahsoka.
Yeah. The real Ahsoka. Yeah. the cartoon Ahsoka. Yeah. Well, I just, like I say, and then the second scene of the show, they said, oh, we're going to celebrate these, you know, people, and Sabine was there, and Hera was supposed to be there.
She wasn't there.
Yeah, she wasn't there.
Tom
she
Cruise
was
down the highway.
Yeah, exactly. They had a weird Tom Cruise scene.
Yeah.
Anyway,
the shot of Sabine's ass is integral to the plot, I assure you.
Yeah, it's so goofy. She's like a 30-year-old person that can't handle any responsibility. But they're like, oh, they pushed the Empire off of this planet many years ago. I'm like, many years ago? What kind of what? That's not a time.
Yeah,
you don't
but I
say
feel
that.
like, yeah, but like Thrawn was like, I've been stranded here for 10 years. And I think Ezra was like, I've been here 10 years or something. But that also like brings up to the question, and this is the same for most sci-fi movies. So don't like, except for maybe Interstellar. But most sci-fi movies, you're like, hey, I'm on this planet. I'm on that planet. And the planets can be any size. And the days are always the same. And the gravity is always the same. So Ezra. I was here 10 years. Okay, well, is that 10 whatever the fuck this planet years is, or 10 like Coruscant years, or what are we talking here?
Yeah, is that 10 actual years? Is it 12 years? Is it 9 years? Right? Like,
yeah, like who knows?
I'm convinced that Star Wars fans.
Oh, go on, Simha.
Sorry. No, I was gonna say I'm convinced that Star Wars fans can write Star Wars better than Star Wars.
Well, that's why I was so excited about this series, because Dave Filoni created Ahsoka, and it should have been all of his stuff. And Dave Filoni has not ever been this fucking sloppy in any of his other things. Even Bad Batch, he hasn't been this sloppy, right? He's been like on point. So it was really like a slap in the face to have Dave Filoni this sloppy.
Well,
on writing, on staying true to the characters that he created and he developed.
Full disclosure, Simha, Nate and I got together after about the 4th episode, and we rewrote the show using all of the things they wrote and turned 4 episodes into 1. And we cut out Sabine getting stabbed with a lightsaber because that's idiotic. If a lightsaber can cut the whole plating of a fucking spaceship.
Dude, that's how Qui-Gon died. So we know it's a death blow.
Right.
Qui-Gon's ghost is like raising his eyebrows like, what the heck?
Like, I wish I was a pansexual, force-sensitive Mandalorian. Then I could have survived Darth Maul.
Yeah, a non-force-using Mandalorian 30-year-old woman.
Well, going against a 16-year-old woman, to be fair.
Right. A 60, she shouldn't even have been using a lightsaber. Right? She's a Mandalorian. She should be,
No, she shouldn't be. And the blonde should have had a lightsaber with training wheels on it or something.
And where did all these Force users come from? They're all supposed to be dead. Right? They're all supposed to be dead. That's the whole
Order
story.
66 apparently was the worst executed plan ever. You get all these fucking Force people out here. You've got enough to make 3 more canon movies, I guess, with Rey Skywalker and some kid that can move a broom, but it was never developed later on. And then you've got enough Jedi for Ahsoka to fight. And it's like, well, she should just be going after Thrawn, and Thrawn should be a master tactician, not trying to play tic-tac-toe with a screwdriver shoved in his frontal lobe. Like, what was that all about? He's supposed to be some master tactician. And now he's like, oh, it's okay if the Jedi get away. Nah, let's send a couple TIE fighters after him. But if they destroy the TIE fighters, I don't care, because we're just loading up stuff, my China collection, in case the Queen visits. And then he's like, nope, we got to send out a couple of squads of stormtroopers to fight them. But we got to get out of here soon. Like, everything's working to plan because we're just delaying them. Like, we don't want them here.
But Nate, they had a lot of member berries.
Yeah, we don't want them
so many
right
member
here.
berries.
But we don't want them right here, specifically where we are. But we're not going to send out our entire force, because I'm going to go back to the real galaxy that has real stormtroopers, not these dead fucks. I don't want them here, but I'm not going to send out my entire force. I'm not going to just carpet bomb where they're at. We know where they're at. They're with the fucking hermit crabs. I hate those hermit crabs. They come and I have to clean my boat before I go to the next lake, or else I'm spreading invasive species. They don't carpet bomb them, and they let Ezra on board. But then why is Ezra back in the main galaxy better than Ahsoka and Sabine back in the main world? Like, it doesn't make any sense.
The whole thing
doesn't make any sense.
Can we do, are we about halfway with the cigar?
Yeah, I'm about halfway.
Can we do thoughts on the cigar? And then I want you two to indulge me in something that's a complete Nateism, and Mike will probably know what I'm talking about. Simha, you'll probably know, except I've never called them Nateisms with you.
I like this cigar. It's very good. Developing
me as well
as the other one did at a smaller size. So I think it's lovely.
This cigar has helped me through a lot. Helped me to cleanse my palate of what I've been experiencing with something I love so much as Star Wars.
Yes.
I needed the dark, leathery flavor.
Sometimes you just need some dark leather in your mouth hole, you know?
You know, in all Star Wars, I have a lot to talk about, but when it came to Ahsoka, I was worried because my original thought was I'm coming on this and I'm going to like talk great about it. But when reality set in, I was like, what am I going to talk about? And I was thinking of it all day. And right before I got on, I was like, I matured because of Ahsoka. Like, I had this whole thought process that helped me, that's what I'm going to say, because I was blinded by my love.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly had super high expectations because up until this point, Dave Filoni has put out some of the greatest Star Wars content that's remained canon, you know, even after George Lucas sold it. Like all of those books and those series and things, all of those were moved to the extended universe. But Dave Filoni's Clone Wars and Rebels remained canon. And Mandalorian season 1 and 2 were really, really good. I really liked that. And this was kind of like the first like failing of Dave Filoni. And that's why I'm curious, is he just tired of fighting for everything? Or did Kathleen Kennedy turn the Sauron eye onto him and say, look, you do it my way or you don't do it at all? And I know he's got one of the 3 movies that are coming out for Star Wars, and apparently it's going to tie up Ahsoka, and Mandalorian will be there, and I think even Bad Batch, and it's going to like wrap up some of these storylines. But then it's like, but then now you're just doing the Marvel thing. Like if you're going to have an 8-part miniseries about Ahsoka, have it have a start and an end. You can have a little cliffhanger, but you can't present all of these things through the 8 episodes and then not answer a single goddamn one of them.
I think your theory... Oh, go ahead, Simha.
No, I was going to say, I have a feeling this is not Dave Filoni's fault. George Lucas said he created a myth because myth means something. It's timeless. It means something to people. And even though he wasn't the best writer himself, I read a little bit about his background, and that was coming from him as a person appreciating lore and myth and meaning. And I'm afraid certain things have kind of lost that. And I suspect it's who he's involved with, let's put it that way, rather than himself, if he did such good in the past.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess like people do change too, but I would be inclined to agree with you and say that it's probably the association, Kathleen Kennedy, that he's surrounded with. And if he wanted to do a movie and he's going to get one of 3 movies because they canceled a bunch of Star Wars movies, if he's got one of the slots, I'm sure he had to do some things to ensure that he gets one of those movies. But I'm still not happy about it because then it's the Marvel thing. And they did that with Book of Boba Fett where they slipped 2 episosodes of Mandalorian into Book of Boba Fett.
Are you worried about the future of Star Wars?
I honestly don't give 2 fucks about the future of Star Wars. I've got my fan edits of the prequels that I really enjoy. I've got the fan recreated original trilogy series, and I've got Clone Wars and Rebels, so I'm happy with that. That's plenty of content for me to go back and rewatch. That's like asking me, am I worried about the future of the 5th element? No, I've got the 5th element. I'm happy with it. I don't need the 6th element or whatever.
Well, I guess I was saying, like, I don't know, that it would ever lose its fun, but it probably already has.
It has lost its fun. And
I mean, the stuff I enjoy hasn't lost its fun. You know what I mean? But
right.
Am I going to be clamoring to get the next, like, oh, let's follow that? And Mike, you might know the name, and Simha, you might know the name too. The rat-eared thing from Jabba's palace. Like, when he gets his series, am I going to be clamoring to watch Jabba's fucking rat thing, the series? No, I'm not going to be clamoring for that. I don't care about that. The stuff I enjoy it, and I like it. And you know, I did like the moments, and I got so upset because I liked that Hayden's back as Vader and Anakin, but I got upset with Obi-Wan. I liked the second and final fight between him and Obi-Wan, but it's Hayden Christensen, but he's in a suit. And then this one, it's Hayden Christensen, but he's not in the suit, but they de-aged him digitally. And I'm like, just let him be Anakin. His Force ghost can be any age it wants to be. It can be anything it wants to be. You know, it doesn't matter. Just let him be Hayden. Like, don't digitally de-age him. Just let him be him and be Anakin. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I agree.
I did appreciate we got to see that, like, Clone Wars style Anakin.
Yeah.
That episode where the dream sequence was the only good episode, and it was because it was basically a Clone Wars / Rebels episode that was live action.
Yeah. That was by far my favorite episode. I loved seeing Hayden Christensen, the actor, the person, call her Snips, actually be able to interact with her in live action. You know what I mean? Like, this is the first time they've interacted live action. So I thought that was really cool. Can I take a brief detour into a Natism?
Okay, that's fine. I want to. Can I close this up?
Yeah, you finish first, Mike. You finish first.
Because I think that Filoni was pressured by Kathleen Kennedy, and I think there's evidence in the show The last episode was called The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. It wasn't The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. It was...
Yeah. It was the Jedi...
The Witch and the
and
Warlock or something like that.
The statues from Middle-earth.
Yeah. And then they fucking had wargs, right? Those wolf things are just wargs from Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
And then they're riders, like they're warg riders. And then at the end of the episode, fucking Ray Stevens is at the gates of Gondor or whatever. He's like at the kings of Gondor.
He's like, Gondor calls for aid and I will answer.
Exactly. Like, I think that it's like definitely the Eye of Sauron is coming down and staring at him, and he's throwing all this Lord of the Rings and C.S. Lewis, like Narnia stuff in there. So like, it's like pointless. I don't understand it.
Yeah, it makes no sense.
Other than like he's just trying to hint, right?
Yeah. Well, and so we know where everybody is except for Shin, except for the blonde, non-Jedi, non-Sith apprentice.
They weren't
just kind of like, but like we don't. I guess we don't have to know where she is, but. In terms of like finishing up all these storylines, they didn't finish up a single goddamn one.
No, I mean, like, yeah, she's raising a lightsaber. The what is it? Ukrainian model, who is now apparently an apprentice with a lightsaber, is raising a lightsaber at a group of warg riders on the plains.
Hey man, hey man, the Force is female. Anyone can be a Force user if they just believe in themselves and try hard. Okay, look at Rey.
Inside you all along. The midichlorians are in your heart.
Yes. She's not a Mary Sue.
That's the Disney message of Star Wars. Been inside you all along.
Yeah. I can levitate my cigar if I just grab it. If I just reach
at least they equally screwed over a legacy character who is a woman, just like they've been doing all the male characters.
I mean, yeah.
Because
that's kind
Sabine
of like,
was a great character.
They're finally doing it.
Right.
But we've come full circle, I guess. I kept thinking they were going to have some kind of weird like lesbian tension between Ahsoka and Sabine. And like why Ahsoka was even trying to train her in the first place when even the David Tennant droid was like, she does not have the Force. She will never have the Force. And then, and they had all these like weird moments, but it was just to draw out time and they never did anything with it. And I'm like, well, just do the lesbian kiss thing then. And let's get the awkwardness out of the way so we can just get back to the storyline then. But I guess that wasn't what it was. So who knows? Like nobody knows.
That would have ruined the whole show for me.
It was like a show about nothing, about people doing nothing.
Simcha, NC-17 hardcore half an hour love scene in the Starship would have made that episode. I would have bought this fucking show on DVD.
I already downloaded the porn parody and it's way better.
Yeah.
That would have ruined it for me because Sabine is Ezra's girl. That's why it would have ruined it for me.
Kind of. What ruined it for me is when she shows up and meets Ezra, and there's like fucking stormtroopers coming, right? They spend half an episode of her saying, "Oh, let's not talk about it yet. Let's just sit here in silence."
Yeah, and then he apparently told him everything. Well, what I really did not like, and this is how this is my proof that Kathleen Kennedy's stanky eye is on Dave Filoni, is when Ezra goes, "So they killed the Emperor?" And Sabine goes, "Well, some people think so." And so that's the first time any of Dave Filoni's stuff, even Mandalorian stuff with Lizzo, of all people, has touched on the sequels. And that's an oblique reference to, well, somehow Palpatine's back,
They need to forget about the sequels. Just
the quicker they do that, the better.
Project and make it like Legends. I don't know, do something.
Well, and I heard a theory they were going to recut the sequel trilogy with deleted scenes, deleted stuff into a mini series, and that would replace the sequels in canon. But I don't know. I can't imagine they have enough good footage to do that because none of the three directors talked to one another about what their plot was going to be. So
they're going to build up anticipation, and we're going to be having a podcast. We're going to be on this podcast again, talking about exactly what we talked about with the Ahsoka show.
Yeah, we're going to say, so we were supposed to watch this new Star Wars thing, but we fucking didn't. So let's talk about the fertilizer used on my grass seed.
Yeah, let's talk about my trip to Split Rock Lighthouse.
Yeah, Lighthouse. I want to say one of the biggest things I had an issue with in the series. So they've got the fight room, right? Like the training room on Ahsoka's ship. And they had that whole like super tense and really interesting training montage where Ahsoka went around and was like tapping Sabine or whatever, and she had the blinder thing on, but they didn't have the zappy droid. It's like, I don't know. The zappy droid's kind of fun. Like, it was fun watching Luke get zapped, and he squealed like a little girl every time he got zapped by that thing with Obi-Wan watching on the Millennium Falcon. But instead of like zapping her, which I feel is like should be a thing because that's just fun to watch people get zapped. I mean, that's why people getting tased is so fun to watch. But then, so they have this training room. So they're like apparently like training in there. They're sweating in there. They've got their shoes on in there. And then what happens? The dining room table comes out of the floor, and then they're drinking tea off of it and like eating food off of it and stuff. Like, this is your floor. You've been training and sweating on this floor. Do you have David Tennant droid like wipe down this table? Like, it's like when Mr. Rogers started saying he was feeding the fish because he had blind girl wrote in and said, please tell me when you're feeding your fish. I don't want them to starve. And so he would always say, I'm now feeding the fish. Well, if you're going to have the floor of your training room also be your dining room table, please just show one scene of somebody wiping that thing down.
I think we've all become better writers thanks to Star Wars.
Nate, that is a Nateism, 100%. I didn't even think about that.
It bothered me so bad, and she's like looking at that cup, trying to move it with the force. And I'm like, that cup is sitting on some nasty ass shit right now. Like, I didn't see anybody wipe this thing down. Like, I don't need to think about the caramel apple vendor in Hocus Pocus 2. I don't need to think about the blue milk economy from the Star Wars sequel trilogy, and I don't need to think about Ahsoka's training room floor that is also her dining room table.
All I could think about the whole time is how could a Master Jedi on the council die from a lightsaber fucking to the chest, but a Mandalorian chick with no force powers, who is a legacy character, granted, and I like her, how did she survive this attack that kills everybody else?
Yeah. What was the, does anyone know what the deal with that green flaming sword thing was? That witch that wasn't a witch, but then became a witch later? Drathomir witch? Like, what the fuck was that thing?
They just wanted to have a cool sword because they had an actress who was trained in martial arts, so they had to have her have a sword fight, and they didn't want to give her a lightsaber.
They finally had one actor who knew how to handle a sword.
The lightsabers battles were shit. They needed to use CGI to speed up those lightsabers.
That's and that 80-year-old woman was like kicking ass.
Right.
I posted about that on Facebook. I was like, come on, Disney, you can do better lightsaber battles than this.
Have you guys ever seen the fan cut where they have the behind-the-scenes battle between Alec Guinness and Darth Vader before Darth Vader strikes him down, which is what you see in the movie?
Is it called Obi-Wan versus Darth Vader Reimagined?
Yeah. It's like awesome.
I sent that to Nate, I think. It was so cool.
Yeah, some fucking dude did that on his laptop or, in the library.
Yeah, literally
or something.
Anybody can do better than what fucking Disney is doing with it.
Yeah. Some guy is like a hobby project did that just to be cool. And it's better than what we got.
Well, and some guy, and I told Simcha about this, but some guy, and he's doing this. He's doing Star Wars Revisited or something. Like I think it's Revisited. He's got a whole website, and he will take donations, but he is making the original trilogy special edition as it should have been, meaning not changing and adding in a significantly smaller CGI model of Jabba the Hutt in a hangar bay than what we see like a movie later. But he's going in and cleaning up all the CGI stuff, and he's putting in some of the special edition stuff, like the much cooler Cloud City backgrounds and things. But he's filming in his apartment. He's filming like the snowspeeder flaps going up so he can superimpose them into the scenes on the Battle of Hoth, because you can see the flaps go up in the exterior shot, but you don't see them from the cockpit shot. So he's putting the flaps in the background, and he's also the last thing I read, his last update was he's recreating the Han Solo and Carbonite model to be in the same shirt that he was frozen in and de-thawed in, but it's not the shirt that he's seen in the Carbonite model in the movie. So
interesting.
He's just doing this he's like, this is what George should have done with it instead of all these like added ridiculous scenes.
Okay, let's stage a coup.
Yeah.
Let's stage a coup. Let all of us, whatever people support the cause, take over.
Right. So
I think Star Wars has given me very little sympathy for the writers' strike that's now resolved, because if the writers are giving us Ahsoka, then stay on strike. We don't need you.
for anybody listening who has not seen the show, watch, is it episode 5? Look it up. The one where Ahsoka has her like fever dream with Anakin, because that's pretty decent.
Yes, that's
and then watch
the only decent one.
Yeah, watch the last episode only because my Sarah like had to stop herself from throwing her art project she was working on at the TV because it made her so mad that they referenced Narnia and Lord of the Rings in such a shitty story. And then I don't know if you guys noticed this, but it bothered me. They got on these wolves that are basically wargs from Lord of the Rings, and they ran towards a starship, and the starship was bombarding them, and they somehow survived the attack, which doesn't make any sense.
Keyword somehow.
Somehow.
Yeah.
I mean, it's ridiculous.
Well, and you have Thrawn, who is supposed to be a master tactician.
Right.
And he's like, hey, let's just hang out here until the Jedi that aren't Jedi can get here and somehow try and thwart our plans, even though they never really thwarted their plans, but they weren't all stranded like I guess he wanted them to be. But if you wanted them to be stranded, then send all of your people after them and let them fight them, and then just abandon them and all your people. Like, who cares? You're going back to Stormtrooper land.
What was weird with the weird gold-faced Stormtrooper?
I don't know.
I thought he was going to be Ezra.
I know there were a lot of people that that were hoping. Who was it? There's some character in like Star Wars lore, or might be extended universe, like the Abeloth, who can reanimate the dead and everything. And people were like, "Oh, they're on the planet that the Force originated from, because it's like mystic being or this whatever." But they never really they didn't wrap anything up with that, or they didn't even give enough hints that it could be anything other than now the Balin is having to hike to a volcano to destroy a magic ring.
Yes.
So they weren't Inquisitors.
No, they had an Inquisitor. They showed a real Inquisitor, but they were not Inquisitors.
Do you know how Inquisitors became to be? Other than the excuse of the people who wrote them in. They were saved from Order 66 because they were disillusioned with the Jedi Order as it was. And so they were saved, and Palpatine, I guess, used their disillusionment to basically make them Sith without making them Sith. That's what I heard.
The rule of two.
I think that's cool.
These two weren't Inquisitors, though, because, well, they didn't have the Inquisitor lightsaber spinny thingy.
But Balin said something like he expressed his disillusionment with the Jedi Order. And I was
like... That doesn't mean anything.
Huh?
That doesn't mean anything in this. Because obviously
in
don't care about
canon. He expressed it. They just know, huh?
I said this series didn't care about anything that's in canon before this came out. If they were Inquisitors, they would have even in Obi-Wan, Reva was an Inquisitor, wasn't she?
Yes.
And she had the Inquisitor blade, like the circular lightsaber thing.
So I was just kind of
these two were not Inquisitors. They were disillusioned with the Jedi, but nobody knows what they were doing because they never bothered to explain it.
Right.
And Balin was always Balin's like, I'm going to leave you here because I have my own mission. But he never explained what it was, except to destroy the One Ring. And then Shin was like, well, I'm going to go become a warlord with these other people that are not Tusken Raiders, but, kind of sort of are Tusken Raiders. And we're going to wage war on the Hermit Crabs because that seems like a good thing to do.
I was just kind of hoping that they would they were introducing, Balin and Shin as some I don't know how to describe it, not Inquisitors, but what were they? I thought they were kind of introduced a concept.
Well, Thrawn called them mercenaries, and I think that's probably as accurate as description as we're ever going to get. Because now that actor's dead, so he's not going to be in whatever movie for Dave Filoni, and there's not going to be enough time, because if Dave Filoni is going to tie in all of his other projects into this movie, there's going to be 57 main characters, so everything's not going to get wrapped up. And I think that's my biggest problem with Ahsoka is they can do whatever they want to do with Ahsoka. But I said, even after the first episode, I told my Sarah, I said, this is an 8-episode mini-series. There is no season 2. Why? Why are they wasting this much time? And then to have 8 episodes and have nothing wrapped up, that doesn't even make any sense. Like, that's the worst writing that anybody could ever possibly do.
The end of episode 8 could easily have been the end of episode 2 or 3.
Episode 5. Like, make that the end of episode 5. You have 3 episodes to bring closure to a lot of these storylines and set something else up. But at least you have kind of like, we found Thrawn. Thrawn's back. We're back. We got away from the hermit crab planet. We're back. We rode the whales back or something, or I don't know what. We stole a Klingon cruiser and slingshot it around the sun, and now we're back because we stopped ourselves in the past from ever going there in the first place or something, and we brought back a humpback whale just for fun. And like, they could do that and then still have a cliffhanger, but at least have the main points of the miniseries wrapped up.
Do you think that they are licking their wounds with the disaster they were not expecting and whatever? Or do you think that they're going to try to somehow, some way, due to the actress passing, like connect some dots? You think they're just going to lick their wounds and we'll never hear?
I don't think they're going to do that because they didn't do that with Carrie Fisher. They literally had Princess Leia floating, unprotected, out in space. They already knew Carrie Fisher was dead before the movie came out. She's floating out in space, unprotected. And they still chose to have her, Mary Poppins, force herself back into the ship and be alive. Like, the actress is already dead before you edited this movie. You could have had her die right there, like on screen, whatever, and bring just closure to the character, yada, yada. She sacrificed herself, blah, blah, blah. No, we want her. We don't give 2 shits about Luke or Han Solo. We're going to have her, who's also not a Force user, in some of the extended universe stuff she is, but nowhere in the movies was she ever a Force user. Then she's going to use the Force to get herself back on board a ship and be fine in issuing orders in like the next 5 minutes. Like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever seen. And you already know she's dead. So how are you going to film the next movie? Well, you're going to use shitty CGI to make it happen. So that's what we're going to expect from the Dave Filoni movie, I guess, is Balin's back, but it's going to be deleted scenes from this series, and it's going to be terrible.
Their de-aging was not the best at times either for Hayden.
No, not at all. And it's like, just let Hayden be Hayden for once. Come on. Like, you brought him back to do this. Like, just let him be him. I don't care if he looks like a farmer. It's an Anakin Force ghost. It can look like anything. He can just say, "Oh, I thought this was a less intimidating form to assume," and then leave it at that. Like, who cares?
Right.
Or like or he could have said, "Had I chosen a different path, Snips, this would be what I look like." You know what I mean? And then leave it at that, because that's philosophical and it doesn't answer a whole lot, and it leaves the viewer to wonder. It puts good questions in your mind. Like, yeah, what if Anakin didn't hate sand so much? Maybe he would be a chubby farmer. Maybe he'd be on a podcast about cigars. Who knows?
Exactly. And he is a farmer. That's a joke that I told
that's
Nate.
The point.
I mean,
Yeah.
he is a farmer, so he looks like a farmer. He just does, right?
Right.
But why not just let him be, a 40, 50-year-old farmer guy with a fucking Jedi costume on?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, who cares? Like, we're glad he's back. And he agreed to do this. Just give us Hayden. We don't need to see him with all the de-aging and the Vader mask and everything. But yeah, I mean, that episode was my favorite episode, I think, of the series.
It made me desire more interactions at some point in lore with Anakin's Force Ghost, because, like, I don't know, I learned about Darth Revan, and he was, you know about Darth Revan?
I do not.
He was a Jedi, and then he became a Sith, and then he went back to being a Jedi, but he didn't go to the temple because he was kind of ashamed. And he got married, and basically the concept is he's balanced because of it. Like, that's balance, if that makes sense at all. Like, he thought the Jedi Council was wrong for marriage, like for prohibiting that type of attachment. And so because of it and what he did, it's balance. Makes it like the ideal Force user, I guess I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of like fan theories about maybe that the Jedi Council basically caused the Clone Wars. I mean, and Palpatine, but their hubris, I guess, kind of forced other events into action. And had they just said, like, yeah, you know what, Anakin, fucking marry Padme, who gives a shit? Then they wouldn't have Darth Vader. You know what I mean?
I've seen the meme where it's like, Anakin, why don't you just leave the Jedi Order and become my personal bodyguard / husband?
Yeah, and then it's like
they're not going to take your force powers away. Yeah, they're not going to take your force powers away, and they're certainly not going to take your lightsaber. So
yeah, or the with was it Samuel Jackson, where he like straight up when Anakin's like he deserves a trial, and he's like no motherfucker, and then it's like okay, well you do that, give me one thing, I just want to marry Padme or get her medical care because she's pregnant, and then he's like that's an odd request, but that's okay, and then it's like written and directed by George Lucas, that everything's fine. Like,
I love those.
yeah,
But is a Force Ghost first off like a conscious being, or is that like some sort of imprint? Like, is that Anakin as
no,
he
I
is
think
now?
that's the next phase of the Force because Yoda was hinting at that, teaching Obi-Wan at the end of the sequel trilogy about how to channel that to become a Force ghost later.
I thought Anakin was gonna tell Ahsoka like who he is now, or say something like that. But see, this is me as somebody who's obsessed with Star Wars. This is the stuff I'm looking for.
Yeah.
You know, so I was kind of
Well,
like
we know Obi-Wan became a Force ghost because he was a Force ghost in the original trilogy, even before the sequels came out, and he was an active participant, right? Like he was actively like
that's right.
you know, when Luke was going down the trench in the X-wing, you know, use the Force, trust your instincts, don't use the targeting computer. Like he was an active participant in events because Luke's first instinct was to use the computer, the targeting computer. And I don't feel like that was him remembering the stuff Obi-Wan would have said. And then when at the end when you had Obi-Wan, the Force Ghost, and then Anakin's Force Ghost at the end, I felt like those were them in the Force afterlife, witnessing the events as they were unfolding, you know. And especially when in the prequels, Yoda was saying like, Obi-Wan, I can send you somewhere where you can learn stuff and to tap into that kind of like Force Ghost stuff. Like there was some reference in there about that.
Also, in the last episode, they had Anakin's Force Ghost in the distance on the magic planet.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, after it was, I can't remember if it was
planet.
before or after the Lord of the Rings scene with Rey, but Ray Stevens, not Rey, the Lady Rey.
Rey Skywalker, yeah.
Yeah.
Ray Palpatine.
By the way, that was
Rey
bittersweet.
Skywalker.
Anakin and Ahsoka. The second when I was showing my children those scenes, I started to think, wow, this is really sad. This is like bittersweet. But
yeah, I pretty much liked all the Ahsoka and Anakin interaction stuff, and it could have just been a full mini series about that.
It could have been a lot of things. Almost anything else would have been better. This was been good. Pathetic. I mean, yeah. I wanted Fulcrum. That's what I wanted. I want him to fill the gap before The Mandalorian and after the Ahsoka book that I sent you, Nate. You know, where it's like...
That was a good book.
Yeah, I wanted the Fulcrum years explained.
Well, and even if they just hinted at the Fulcrum years, but there was no mention of Fulcrum whatsoever, and it was just like, Ahsoka is lame. Like, she didn't do anything. She didn't have any strong desires. She wasn't even in most of the episodes, you know, like a majority of the episodes.
Right. And the politics didn't make sense either because they're like, oh, Ahsoka's going to go and chase down these Force users. And she says the Thrawn's back. And they're like, well, who cares what she says? It's like, bitch, she's Fulcrum. That's why you care. This is her job.
Yeah, well, but also like, who cares? Because she's not a Jedi and she's not a Sith. So she doesn't really have to listen to anybody's bullshit. And then to have C-3PO come in and be like, Leia gave her consent to this thing. And then it's like, that scene took forever. And it's like, I don't need C-3PO in this. You know, like, have Chopper come in and say, fuck you to everybody. Like, that's more in character than anything else.
Right.
Dude, I'm such a fanboy. When C-3PO came on, I was like, oh!
Sarah was excited until she heard what C-3PO said. And she's like, that is so lame.
Yeah, this is some bullshit.
That is so lame. What is the point of any of this? Like, isn't that green woman supposed to be an important person?
Yeah, just let Hera do what Hera does. Like, she's already proven herself. You don't need to have a whole like Senate inquiry into her actions. Like, just let her go. Like, you've won the war. What do you need her for here? You don't have other people that can pilot an X-wing and blast Imperial scum. You know what I mean? Like.
Right.
The political interactions like made me think that this is just another government that's going to make people disillusioned and it's going to cause, you know, That's where
Yeah, but that's
Kylo
what
Ren
they
comes
want
in.
you to think, so that they can set up the sequel trilogy and somehow try and salvage the sequel trilogy by retconning a whole bunch of shit.
Yep.
I have to say, guys, my fingers are burning. I don't know about yours.
Mine too.
Yeah, mine too. Bottom line, we love Ahsoka. She's our girl. And
Watch the Clone Wars. The Clone Wars are great. Watch Rebels. Rebels is great.
I like the
Rebels.
general concept of the adult Ahsoka, but like I'm just really, kind of hoping that if Ahsoka continues in any way, shape, or form in the whole series and the whole franchise, that they do it. They stay true to the Ahsoka that we fell in love with.
Well,
Right.
they set the bar so low with this series for me to hold out any hope on that. But I think the important thing is that we all love Star Wars. We don't love everything that Star Wars has put out, for sure. And we've got strong ideas of what this could have been or should have been, and we were left disappointed.
Let's take over. Coup attempt.
Right.
Yeah.
I was very disappointed because they shit all over all of the good characters they've had since the original series, basically.
Yeah. They basically shit on Hera because she wasn't Hera until like the 6th episode.
Right. They shit on Sabine.
They shit on Ahsoka because she wasn't Ahsoka until after the 5th episode. And then they shit on Sabine because she was, I'm just going to say, borderline retarded for the whole series, basically.
Yep. They shit on Thrawn.
They shit on Thrawn because, I feel like I could beat him at tic-tac-toe. Like, after this new series. Like, tactician my butt. Like,
right. They shit on Ezra.
He couldn't think himself out of a paper bag. He's like, oh, you witches, can you get me out of this paper bag? And they'd be like, yeah, sure. Here's the opening. And he'd be like, splendid. Now I will destroy those Jedi. Or not, because I'm trying to load my ship. But how long does loading take? I don't know. I never thought about that. And they shit on Ezra. They kind of shit on the hermit crabs, too. But
the hermit crabs are weird. I mean, it's fine. They're trying to sell toys.
It's okay.
They want you to buy them.
But like what? Like Ezra has to have companions. He can't just be chilling with space whales. You know what I mean? Like, you already have the space whales. You could sell space whale plushies all day long. I don't want
Ezra with the full power of the Force, and I thought he was going to be like the Force beast that they found in the desert.
Too.
You know what I mean? Like, if he was like the Force beast, then he could be with the crab people. That's cool.
Yeah, I don't
he could
care
be like
who he's chilling with, as long as he's a badass Jedi motherfucker. You know what I mean?
And then he's like the Warg warriors, the Warg riders come up in the little orc band, and he like forces them into nothingness or whatever.
Yeah.
You know,
he just he snaps his fingers and they cease to exist. And then like Sabine's like, "What did you just do?" And he's like, "Oh, I just snuffed out their life flame. No big deal." And then you'd be like, "Holy shit." But no, instead of that, what do we get? We get Ahsoka Tano fondling the goddamn fucking magic map ball and like, ooh, Sabine went with them willingly. Oh, I have memories from this. This ball has memories. So what? The ball now also can tell you where Thrawn is, that nobody else knows. Nobody knows where Thrawn is. But somehow this magic ball knows where Thrawn is and knows that Sabine went with these people willingly. But yet when Obi-Wan Kenobi hands Luke the Youngling Slayer 2000, he doesn't say, wow, this killed a lot of kids. He's like, oh, cool.
Right. Yeah. This killed a lot of sand people and children.
Yes.
And droids.
And the women, too.
And separatists. And
not just the men, but the women and the children, too.
Yeah.
Like, come on. Like, you're just inventing Force things now because your writing sucks.
They can't follow the rules. Right? The rules are what give sci-fi and fantasy stories legitimacy. You have to follow the rules internal to the story.
Yeah, you can't just set up whatever rules you want, but then you have to follow them.
Right. That's the limitations are why it's interesting to watch them overcome.
So I know I mentioned them a few times, but I listen to Star Wars Theory when I'm hungry for Star Wars. And long story, just Google Star Wars Theory versus Disney. But I listened to quite a bit of his stuff, and I would love to talk to that guy. That guy is, he's very passionate. He made a fan film about Darth Vader, well done, and there was supposed to be it was a short film, but it was very good, and he was trying a bigger project, and I guess something happened. Disney, they don't have a good relationship, let's put it that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure now that Disney owns it, they don't have a good relationship with anybody that wants to do any fan stuff with Star Wars.
But he did such a good job.
Yeah, I like that. You sent me one of the shorts. That was good.
Guys, you should talk to Star Wars Theory one day. I could listen to that all day.
Yeah, we'd be happy to.
Well,
the
we'll
guy
have our one
cried
listener
on a
contact.
video. The guy was like in tears. His face, it's a whole thing. He's very passionate. Maybe that's kind of like the same wavelength I am. Not in like a weird obsessed way. I don't have much paraphernalia. I'm just saying, like,
Yeah. Well, so I guess that's the ask then, Keith and Dev. If you know the Star Wars Theory guy, hook us up. We'll talk to him.
Yes.
He can pick the cigar.
Yes, we will get it.
Or, if he wants us to guest on his podcast, we'll still smoke a cigar and we'll just mention it at the inopportune times.
I want to at least touch the sleeve of his shirt. Okay, no, that was a joke.
Hey, man, whatever you're into.
You. We can't judge anymore.
Yeah, I'm not judging.
One thing Kathleen Kennedy told us is if we judge, then we're the toxic Star Wars fan base. So Ahsoka was great. I love it. Go watch it, consume. Put on your sunglasses and consume. And keep Disney in power forever.
Don't waste your time with it if you're trying to thinking it's going to build on lore.
Yeah, I was kind of like, and I've seen Rebels, but I'm guessing the large populace of people that watched Ahsoka because of her brief cameo in Mandalorian have not seen Rebels, and to not do any sort of catch up, like here's 15 minutes of the summation of what happened in Rebels and who these characters are, I feel like this was a huge disservice. Like, even as somebody who's seen Rebels, I'm like, just doesn't have to be long, but you don't need 3 episodes on the map ball. Give us like 15, 20, maybe half an hour on a summation of Rebels at the first episode, and then let's rock and roll.
My Sarah was totally lost about why she was supposed to care about Sabine or Hera. She had no idea why Hera's kid was just a human with green hair. Like, she that threw her off. She's like, there should be some more indications that this is her biological child, right? Like, and that threw me off too. I'm like, what the fuck? Yeah. Like, half alien, half human, or whatever, Yeah, it was awful. So many awful things.
Something different. They need to change the title and then make a real series called Ahsoka and give us what we want.
Call this one Star Trek 3: The Search for Thrawn or something.
If this adult Ahsoka is to exist in the Star Wars universe the way her young self has, let's explore that, man. That's what I'm saying. Give us a show about her.
Right.
Yeah. This
it's like Boba Fett.
This one was like Sabine. This one should have just been called Sabine.
Yep. Yeah, Boba Fett wasn't about Boba Fett either.
No.
I do appreciate that Obi-Wan was about Obi-Wan, and they did, feed my craving for him and what happened between him and Anakin.
Why did he know the Princess Leia?
Yeah, there was a lot of problems with Obi-Wan. I think my favorite parts of Obi-Wan were his introspections on his failings as Anakin's teacher.
That's what I like.
But everything else is pretty dumb because it's like he's hanging out with Leia, and then Luke is there, and Luke in the original trilogy is like, Tatooine's so boring, I just want to leave. But he's running for his life from an Inquisitor, but they have to make Luke still think Tatooine's boring. So what's the best solution for that? A concussion, of course. So, I mean, that's super lazy writing, you can do Obi-Wan, you can have him be introspective, but don't involve Luke and Leia. Just have him go and try and find one of his Jedi buddies who he thought survived Order 66. Just these small little tweaks would make these things make a lot more sense.
It did make for some good memes.
Well, yeah. Instead of trying to pigeonhole them into everything else, you know what I mean? They're pigeonholing everything into everything. And it's like the Marvel Universe. Now we got to watch everything to understand anything.
I'm fine with that, but they have to produce good content if that's going to be the case. Yeah. They're taking
vast liberties with that style of... And everything's got to be self-contained. If you're doing a mini-series, it's got to be self-contained. I guess the Obi-Wan thing was self-contained because the plot with him and Leia resolved at the end, but there was no resolution in Ahsoka at all. Zero resolution of anything that was presented.
Nothing was done.
Nothing was done.
I can sum up the whole story. They found out that Thrawn and Ezra were in a different universe They
And
went
they
to that
swap
other
places.
universe and they swapped places.
Yes.
And then they had a bunch of iconography from movies and franchises that are infinitely superior to this show. And it's like infuriating.
Yeah. Very frustrating.
By the way, my fingers are burning as well.
Yep. I just
But
put
like,
mine out.
there's like so much we could like for days on this. Like that's for days.
But it's all going to
we
be
could
the
go
same shit,
forever.
just whining and complaining about how bad it was, basically.
I mean,
Before the
basically.
Ahsoka show, the person I was would have like philosophized all the things they didn't resolve. Like I would build on these philosophies and theories, but I had reality check. It's just bad writing. I don't need to bust my brain on like connecting. I enjoy doing it. That's why I do it. I'm saying like it's a hobby.
I mean, we all enjoy like. I mean, even if they shit all over our favorite stuff, it's still enjoyable to go and like break it down and like explain why it was bad or how it was bad or what we would have done different or better. So I guess like in that sense, it was a win, right? If they want us to talk about it and they want us to be like passionate about it. But when we say it sucks and here's like 3 things you could have done just out of the gate to make it better, and then they will call us toxic. Like we're the toxic fan base now. Like that's not what we're about. I mean, it's supposed to be, you're supposed to have civil conversations about stuff.
Right. Yeah. I'm all for Ahsoka and Sabine going around and having adventures. Like that would have been great. But Sabine doesn't need to be a fucking Jedi. That's ridiculous. It's pointless.
That's
ridiculous.
stupid.
Stupid.
What I would have loved to see, because they already had a live action the blue guy. Sorry, spacing.
Thrawn.
No.
Blue guy.
The from Rebels, not Thrawn. Ezra's bunkmate.
Oh, Zeb.
They already had him in Mandalorian for a brief scene. What I wanted was, instead of Ahsoka and David Tennant droid, to be Jonah or Pinocchio and Geppetto or whatever the fuck in the whale, whoever's all in whales. Like, I don't know. It's weird that it's happened twice, right? Like with Jonah and Pinocchio. Anyway,
Right.
And now Ahsoka would be for Hera to come and say, look, I've got Zeb, I've got Chopper, we've got Sabine, and we've got Ahsoka, and we're going to go wreck shit in Thrawn's galaxy and like have a Rebels reunion and go wreck Thrawn's face. And then get Ezra back, and it'd be like the full reunion at the very end. And that would have been the end of the series. You've got all the Rebels characters there and Ahsoka, and they wrecked face on Thrawn, and then we're good. Like,
yeah, they could even have left Thrawn alive on the planet just with nobody else, or something.
Or he escapes, but they wreck face on the wizards or the witches, and then they chase him back, and they're like, okay, we got this. And then they go, and then it roll credits, and then the movie picks up with that, right? Like,
right.
That's fine with me, but at least there's some resolution. There's some, like, we actually did something instead of just swap places.
Yeah, it was a complete, like I say, if you have not watched it and you were listening, watch the 5th episode, which is really cool, interesting. And then if you really want to just know how shitty it is, watch the last episode. And that will give you a very good idea of how bad all the other episodes are.
Yeah. And the cool thing about watching the 5th episode, because it has none of the other characters, it's just Ahsoka and Anakin. And then you can watch the last episode, you'd be like, who are all these characters? And it doesn't matter because they never really explain who they are anyway in the 8 episodes.
None of them are important, really. They're all losers. So
yeah.
Yep. I know my Sarah's, I'm having her watch the Clone Wars with me, the cartoon. And she's like, these Jedi were not very nice. I'm like, no, they weren't. There's a reason why everybody wants them gone. Like, everybody hates them, more or less, other than the Jedi. So,
yeah.
Not that you would know that by modern Star Wars, but they really don't want to talk about political context. That's for sure.
The community leaders failed Anakin. It was a failure on the people that were the leaders. They saw something as a threat, fear of attachments. Like they saw it as a threat. And I think that was a big wrong and how they handled all that.
Yeah. Well, I don't know that, because there's certain religions that have, I know I watched a documentary. It was called like Monk with a Movie Camera or something, and it was about this guy who became a monk, or not monk with a movie camera, but like monk with a camera, because he was a photographer. And they said, no, you can't have any attachments. and he was ready to give up his camera, but they kind of like encouraged him to keep his camera and to take it out, and not frequently, but like to take it out every once in a while and still do some of his photography stuff, because they realized that even though this might be a worldly possession attachment, it still did his soul good. So they understood that. And I thought I read something somewhere where George Lucas might have said, like, the Jedi's rule against attachment isn't that you can't actually have attachments, but you need to understand that you could lose them at any time. More of a thing than like don't have them at all. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
That, and like if the Force is passed down through offspring, you would want your Jedi Masters to procreate frequently, wouldn't you?
You would
That's
sure
true.
think so. You would sure think so. Yeah.
That's true.
But I think we have to give our disclaimer, like none of us are Jedi Masters, so we don't know. Consult your local Jedi Master. If anything we said offended
Local
you.
competent Jedi Master.
Yes.
That's what they say here. Contact your local competent Orthodox rabbi.
Yeah.
That's great.
But like when I have something express a concern to my spiritual mentors or whatever, not like a real concern, like whatever is going on in my life, like every answer is catered to what's going on with my kids and whatever, and all the things that come about that. I got neurodiverse children. The answer is based on like my situation as opposed to like how they handle Anakin. I don't know if this makes sense. Like how they handle Anakin was they were just trying to give him the dogma and didn't really meet him where he was at, I'm trying to say.
Yeah, for sure. Well, they're also in the middle of like the largest war in the history of Star Wars.
Right. There's layers of
and they
failure.
couldn't have said, yeah, we're this huge war, so of course, Anakin, we can't give you the help you need. But they stuck with their weird, like, pragmatic dogma, and they were like, well, we grant you a seat on the council, but you're not a master. Well, don't you make exceptions in wartime? Like, come on. Like, what's your problem? What's your big deal?
Right. He's one of your more successful commando-style generals.
Yeah.
Like, you got to throw him a bone, right? He's out there slaughtering people on behalf of your cause.
Yes.
Potentially the most famous warlord you have. So that's kind of how the system works.
The only one more famous than him is Rudolph.
Anyway, guys, I am done with my
I'm
cigar.
done. We should probably wrap this up because we could, like Simcha said, we have days of content we could could just converse about. But thank you, Simcha, for I was saying thank you, Simcha, for being a guest on our Ahsoka recap review episode.
We still love you, Ahsoka. Just never forget that. We have faith.
We love you how we remember you.
Some of us have faith, yes. We love the memory of you.
She's our wife.
I thought I'd be more angry about the fact that I don't like the show, but it was just so bad. I just was massively disappointed and I couldn't get mad. I was like, this is just disappointing.
Well, it was disappointing that it kind of fell in with the rest of the Disney Star Wars series that have come out.
Yeah. And their casting was great. Rosario Dawson's wonderful. All the actors I thought were well cast.
Yeah. I had no problem with any of the actors.
No. Yeah. I didn't even just
mind
wasted
that
resources.
Thrawn, like, I didn't even mind because some people were like, well, Thrawn is too fat. I'm like, well, I don't care. Who cares? That's the guy that did his voice in Rebels. So
he's not too fat. He's been on a weird planet for 10 years.
Planet. He's been eating nothing but hermit crab for 10 years. Okay, you eat hermit
crab. All right, let's
let
another cigar because I got like 1,000 more questions.
Well, let's wrap this episode, and then if we want to sit and talk, we could talk for a little bit longer. But
absolutely.
Thanks for listening.
Be safe. Have fun.
Have a good night.